Russian President Vladimir Putin is a spy by trade. United States President Donald Trump says that he'll get along with this man. Can Vladimir Putin be trusted? Could he be a dependable ally of America? Find out next on The Key of David with Gerald Flurry.
Are you from Russia? All right. I think our relationship with Russia will be very good. I believe we will have a very good relationship with Russia. I believe that I will have a very good relationship with Putin.
If Mr. Trump does get along with, let's say, very well with Vladimir Putin, just what does that mean for America? And it does introduce a very significant question. And that is, what happens to America if we do get along well with Vladimir Putin? What happens to us? What happens to this country? If you look at history and the Bible, or Bible prophecy, there is a shocking answer to that question. And I'd like to show you that today. But first, I want to give you a little background. Vladimir Putin has actually preyed on both political parties in the U.S., and I think there's ample evidence of that. And he's been a horrible example in this world, especially against America and Britain and the Jews in the Middle East. Iran is the #1 terrorist sponsoring nation in the world, and Vladimir Putin has given him very heavy, hefty support, even in developing nuclear weapons. Iran's #1 goal is to destroy America. They call America the Great Satan. And then their #2 goal is to destroy the nation called Israel in the Middle East. They're the #2 Satan. And Vladimir Putin keeps supporting this vile, sick policy that Iran has. Can Mr. Trump really get along well, very well, with Vladimir Putin when he has such disgusting and devastating policies that are just sick to the core and even satanic? Can we get along with him? Can God get along with the devil? We need to think about that, because this is the real world that we're talking about. Vladimir Putin has killed in far excess of 160,000 of his own people in Chechnya. Now, that would be somewhat like Washington, D.C. deciding they're going to kill 160,000 people in New York, for example, the state of New York. And Putin's conduct inside Russia, well, you also have to look at the more than 130 journalists that he has murdered since he has been president. And he has just taken total control over the media. He's just crushed any independent media. That would be like America murdering all the opposing journalists of the administration, and then just crushing anybody who in the media who opposes them. Now, this is something that is very serious, and we all need to think about it. I gave a program a couple of weeks ago on the prophesied Prince of Russia, and I want to give a part 2 to that today and give you more information about the prophesied Prince of Russia, Vladimir Putin. He is prophesied in your Bible, and that means he's going to play a significant role in this world and its military might, to be sure. In chapter 38 of Ezekiel, this is Ezekiel being an end-time book. Let me read the first 2 verses to you again. And I've explained this in our new booklet that we're sending out about the prophesied Prince of Russia. And if you didn't order your booklet, well, please do so, because let me tell you, it is a critically important booklet. And you need to read it. I think every person on this earth needs to read it. because it is Bible prophecy and it comes from God. But in chapter 38, in verses 8 and 16, it talks about the latter years. And then in verses 1 and 2 it says, "And the word of the Eternal came unto me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog." That's Russia and China. Our booklet proves that. It says the chief prince of Meshech, or Moscow today, and Tubal, Tobolsk, another city in the eastern part of Russia. And the word chief there actually should read the prince. It should read the prince of Rosh, R-O-S-H, which is really the modern day Russia. That's all proven in this booklet that we're offering you. But against Gog, the land of Magog, the prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. God says, well, now there is a messenger where somebody is told to prophesy against this prince of Russia. And it's very easy to prove who that prince is. I want to read to you a really important article from the Washington Post, and the title of it is "The Death of a Former KGB Operative as a Reminder of Vladimir Putin's Past Life as a Spy," by Peter Hawley, January 23rd, 2016. And he talks about Putin growing up in a crowded apartment complex, but he had great dreams and things he wanted to do. And even as a teenager, he just was dreaming about becoming a spy. He wanted to be a spy, and he achieved that goal. Here's what the article says. "Even before I finished high school, I wanted to work in intelligence," Putin said, according to a biography posted on the Kremlin website. "Granted, soon after I decided I wanted to be a sailor, but then I wanted to do intelligence again." The biography notes that an ambitious young Putin even attended a public reception at the office of the KGB Directorate to ask how he could become an intelligence officer. Now, the KGB is our equivalent of the CIA, or their intelligence agency. And it is one of the most vile and brutal intelligence agencies that has ever been on this earth. And they have the deeds and the actions there to prove it. You don't have to look very far to understand that. Then this article goes on to say, but Putin told his biographers that the allure of espionage transcended high-minded ideals. Well, that's his ideal was much higher, was espionage. Not these high-minded ideals that many people have in this world, certainly in the Western world. Now, he loves spying, and he's being discussed a lot in the news today as having hacked the Democratic National Committee. And I think both parties generally agree that he has been involved in such activities. He is a spy by trade. His business has been that of being a spy for many years. This article goes on to say, "I was most amazed by how a small force," this is Putin talking, "I was most amazed by how a small force, a single person really, can accomplish something an entire army cannot," he said, according to the Telegraph. "A single intelligence officer could rule over the fates of thousands of people. At least that's how I saw it." Now, he was fascinated by espionage and spying and being in an intelligence agency. If you can call the KGB that, it's really much more diabolical than any other intelligence agency that we know of on this earth, with maybe a few exceptions that would be equal to theirs in Russia. But notice what it says here. Putin and the KGB's foreign intelligence wing are in the news again following reports that he likely approved the murder of another former KGB operative, Alexander Litvinenko, according to a British inquiry released Thursday. Litvinenko, a Russian KGB officer turned British intelligence agent, was killed nearly a decade ago after unwittingly ingesting radioactive polonium that had been sipped into a cup of green tea he was drinking. Now, this is the espionage that he loves to be a part of. And he's been doing it for many years of his life. And the KGB was, well, it was just pushed aside when the Soviet Union broke up, but Vladimir Putin has resurrected it. And let me show you what they say he has done, even far more than what the KGB used to do. This article goes on to say the KGB-style assassination, which has been described by a British parliamentary committee as, quote, a miniature nuclear attack on the streets of London, and will sharpen the focus of other suspicious deaths among Putin's foes, according to the Post, Griff Whitty and Michael Birnbaum. I mean, it's like they took a nuclear bomb ingredient and poisoned that man who betrayed the KGB as Putin saw it. And he became an agent for the British, and that was the ultimate sin as far as Vladimir Putin was concerned. On his deathbed, Litvinenko himself accused Putin of organizing his murder as well as other crimes as wide-ranging as terrorism and pedophilia. Well, not a very good reputation this man Putin has. But notice the article has this to say: years after his sudden and stunning rise to power, a question remains. How did Putin's time working for the KGB shape his worldview? And how does it continue to influence his leadership? Now, Mr. Trump certainly needs to know this. And if you just look at Mr. Putin's deeds, his actions, he'll tell you what the answer to that question is. How did the KGB shape his worldview? How did it influence his leadership? Well, let's look at his deeds, and that'll tell you. As the Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them. By their fruits. The article continues, to his fiercest critics, the strong man's authoritarian impulses are contemporary reflections of the ruthless Cold War security apparatus that molded him into a master spy. Putin, as the Russian journalist Masha Gessen told The Telegraph in 2012, is a supersized model of the KGB. He's a supersized model of the KGB. He's resurrected it and supersized it. This is a monster times a monster. Can Mr. Trump really get along very well with him? And if we can get along very well with Vladimir Putin, then shame on us. What nation could be friends with this evil, destructive murderer and just really a friend of the devil? I mean, he really has all kinds of anti-God policies. This is the most evil intelligence agency that I have been familiar with. There might be a handful that are equal to that today, but where do you see it? Where do you see it done like Vladimir Putin does it? And it's also anti-God in a multitude of ways. I want to read you one more short paragraph here in this article. It says, communist ideology has gone, but the methods and psychology of its secret police have remained. And Alexei Kondorov, a KGB general turned politician, told The Economist in 2007. But has that ideology really gone? Well, I have an article I want to send you, a longer article, Communism in America Today, and see if you think that ideology has really gone. Or do we just fail to see what is happening in our own land, in the Western world to a great extent? Here's another quote I need to give you. The journalist Gessin added, he's an average Soviet functionary with stronger than average emotions and higher than average vindictiveness. He's vindictive. He's vengeful. That's just his character, they say. And he just has nothing but contempt, the article says, for the opinions of the Russian people. Gessin told the Telegraph that the final stages of Putin's KGB career were actually a period of disillusionment and tumult as the fiercely patriotic operative watched from the geopolitical front row as the Soviet Union disintegrated and thousands of humiliated KGB officers were cast aside by the state. The article continues, I think a lot of his resentment goes back directly to that period, Gessin said. Having been in the KGB in a bad time, having been outside the country when everything was changing, he's a very vengeful man. He's vengeful. That's one of his particular traits of character. Yes, it is. And the fruits are there to prove it. The deeds are there to prove it. And that vengefulness, the article says, has carried through. He's pursuing a vendetta against everybody who was ever opposed to the Soviet Union. And according to Litvinenko's widow, Marina, that vendetta extended to her husband. Now here you see, if he has supersized the KGB, that means he's just supersized that murder machine, that machine of deception. It's just a way of life of the KGB. Murder and deception and lies. That's what keeps it going. That's what flows from that intelligence agency, if you want to call it that. Murder is just a way of life, and now he has resurrected it and made it supersize. Can we get along very well with such a monstrous example in this world? Can we? Is that realistic? Well, it certainly has. All that has carried through. And then there was Britain's High Court that actually said that he was guilty of those crimes. It came right out of Russia, and they knew that Vladimir Putin was behind it. They have no doubt about that. But U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump said on July 31st, 2015, I think I would just get along very well with Vladimir Putin. Now let me show you what is going to happen to people who get close to that kind of a person and get close to, let's say, getting along with them very well. Notice Hosea 7 and verse 7. This is an end-time book, and if you don't know who Israel is, our book on the United States and Britain and prophecy will prove that to you. But here it's talking about Ephraim and Israel. They're used interchangeably. Ephraim is the ancient name of the British peoples, which would be the UK and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa. But notice what it says here about Ephraim to begin with. They are all hot as an oven, and that just means they're steeped in corruption and have devoured their judges, and all their kings are fallen. There is none among them that calls unto me. Ephraim, he has mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned. And, well, a cake not turned just means it's burned out inside. It's just ready to collapse, yet it still looks like a cake, but it isn't at all. And God says if we don't learn some lessons, that our nation is going to crumble the same way. What happens when we get closer and closer to Putin? We get further and further away from God. That's what these verses are saying. That's deadly dangerous. Notice verse 9, foreigners eat away his strength, Israel's strength. And you need to know who they are. Foreigners like Russia and China and Iran and Germany just eat away at his strength. Israel's strength, unknown to him. Gray hairs are on him here and there, unknown to him. He doesn't know his own condition at all. Verse 10, Israel's pride shall confront and convict them, yet they will not come back to the eternal. See, there's the problem. They're God, nor seek him in spite of it all. See, he says they're just like a senseless, silly dove. They go to Egypt, and they go to Assyria, or modern-day Germany. And as we go to those nations and ally ourselves with them or seek help from them, we're moving further and further and further away from God. We're forsaking God. And only God can save us today in these horrifying times. Verse 10 says, in the New King James, the pride of Israel witness against him. Yet they do not return to the eternal their God, nor seek him for all this. For all these problems and all these crises we see in the world, we don't seek God. Not really. Not the God of the Bible, but we seek false gods, God says here. And he says, woe betide them for forsaking me, for deserting me, in verse 13. And then God says in verse 12, I'll just read the last part of that again, I will chastise them according to what their congregation has heard. I'm going to chastise them as their congregation has heard. We're going to have to learn a lesson from God's trials and tests, or we're going to be in much greater danger. And yet there is a message going out, God says. This very message right here is going out and being proclaimed to Israel, the nations of Israel. It's far more than just a little nation in the Middle East. That is really just the nation of Judah, biblically. Biblical Judah, it's called. But you see any place where this message is being thundered to this nation time and time again? Let me tell you, we have TV all over America and all over Canada, and certainly cover it quite well in Canada and in Britain, in Australia, New Zealand. God says your congregations have heard this. The message is there. And it's right out of Hosea, and it's right out of Ezekiel. And God says, yet we don't seek him as a result of it. Where is God? We get further and further away from God and closer to Vladimir Putin so he can prey upon us. And that's what he will do. That's all he knows to do. And he'll do it. Set the trumpet to your mouth, it says in Hosea 8 and verse 1. Just blow the trumpet and set it to your mouth and deliver this message to the people. Somebody has just set their trumpet right to their mouth and just keeps blowing and proclaiming this message about what we're doing in these nations of Israel, America and Britain and the Jewish nation. What is wrong with our peoples today? Where is that trumpet? And it even talks about in verse 14, for Israel has forgotten his maker and builds temples, and Judah has multiplied fenced cities. In other words, they're just protecting themselves. Woe to them that have fled from me. Well, I just want to tell you that there is good news here, and we need to understand the good news. All of these things are prophesied. I mean, all of these events that are unfolding before your eyes are prophesied. Here we hear about the cyber warfare. And you look at Ezekiel 7 and verse 14, it talks about a nation having the trumpet blown, the trumpet of war, and they don't even respond. And I think that's all about cyber warfare. Somebody has attacked their military technology and they can't even go to war. That's a frightening scenario that we need to think about. But all of this, the prophesied prince of Russia, and all of these massive armies that are building up on this earth are all prophesied to lead directly into the second coming of Jesus Christ. Only Jesus Christ can deal with this problem, and He's about to destroy all of those armies very quickly. Until next week, this is Gerald Flurry. Goodbye, friends.
Thousands of years ago, the prophet Hosea recorded a thunderous warning message for the nations that would descend from ancient Israel. Request Gerald Flurry's free booklet, Hosea, Reaping the Whirlwind, to learn how the biblical book of Hosea forecasted the moral decay and the lack of leadership in America today. God calls America, Britain, and the Jewish nation in the Middle East a silly dove for seeking alliances with mortal enemies. The curses will only continue until these nations turn to God for help. Read Hosea, Reaping the Whirlwind, to understand the beautiful ending of Hosea's gloomy story. Vladimir Putin is described as vengeful toward traitors and contemptuous towards his own people. He's supersized the former KGB spy agency, a prolific murder machine. Because of this terrifying leader, Russia is still a real and present threat on the world scene. America may worry about the aggression of Vladimir Putin, but she has brushed aside the danger of communist infiltration. Request our free reprint article, Communism in America Today, to learn about a type of warfare that causes destruction in an unexpected way. Its chief victim is the ultimate physical resource, the human mind. The Soviet Empire collapsed in 1991, but communist infiltration of America continues to this day. Learn how communist ideology has weakened America from within, perverted her morals, sabotaged her education system, wrecked her social structure, weakened her industrial and economic power, and demoralized her armed forces. To better understand the psychological warfare currently undermining the greatest nation on earth, request Communism in America Today. All of our literature is available free of charge, at no cost or obligation to you. Request Hosea, Reaping the Whirlwind, and Communism in America Today. Order now.